thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the film, and I'm very excited to bring back the director, Azazel. Aza is here, and also the wonderful cast led with Michelle Pfeiffer and Lucas Hedges, who are also somewhere on the screen. So,
I see them.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm going to start with a few questions. Maybe I'll start with you, Aza, and then we can bring the Michelle and Lucas in the discussion. Your film is based, obviously, on a novel by Patrick deWitt. It's someone you worked with before on Terry, that was made a few years ago. But can you talk specifically about how this movie came about, or you talk about the adaptation and your involvement from the book to the script?
Sure. I mean, Patrick and I have been close friends for a very long time. And so we've been sharing our work at not like late stages, but not complete finished stages, which has kind of given me this amazing window into his work, but also the chance to kind of think very early on whether his writing, whatever book he's working on, is a story that I think I can want to tell, or that I think I could do a good job telling. I can't exactly say like why why French Exit over Sisters Brothers, but like when I read Sisters Brothers, though I loved the book and felt very close to it, I could tell that I wasn't the director for that. But with French Exit, I read a manuscript, I guess about 3.5 years ago, and just called them up immediately afterwards. And I just, maybe because I didn't know yet why I was so connected, but I felt immediately so connected to the story, was enough for me to go on and feel like, oh, I have something. I know I have a connection here, and this is enough for me to go on and want to tell the story.
But did you also work with him on the script, or did Patrick write?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did work with Patrick on the script, but really, I mean, he's written a few scripts since we did Terry in 2011 is when it came out. So in 2010, he had written that, and that was really his first screenplay. And we would meet up. Like I went to Portland, and then we would just kind of give notes and leave him alone for a while. And then he continued to work on it. And then once Lucas and Michelle were both involved, we also continued to talk to him about the script and give notes and ideas and things that we were inspired by. And we kept going back to the book, the three of us. I think the book, for us, had something that we very, very much wanted to hold on to. I know sometimes with adaptations, people want to push away from the book. But in this case, we kind of used the book as the testament to keep leaning on and going, okay, can we dig farther into something that he had already done? How do we represent this in this script? And Pat was very much open to that, including the changes that happen when you go into shooting, where you just have to make choices that were for things that to translate, either be more cinematic or more precise. You just have to make these changes.
Mm-hmm. So since we're very lucky to have Michelle and Lucas with us, I wanted to ask you about the casting of the film, because it's something you've said before. It's your visual approach is dictated by the performers themselves. So do you start thinking about this before casting, or does that come later in the process, like when you already are working with the actors, when you're rehearsing, when you're filming? And what were you really looking for, in terms of vulnerability for the characters?
Well, again, reading French Exit, it's not a world that I'm familiar. Even though I grew up in New York City, I didn't know this particular world of New York City. And so I liked the fantasy that it brought, at least into my mind, and the way that I imagined things. So there was this great opportunity to create a world that felt grounded in a certain way, but also theatrical. And that kind of mixture is something that really super inspires me. So it wasn't so much about how do we represent this, but how can we create something that has some of these elements in there, but also shape our own world. I'm trying to think of, like, obviously, like meeting Michelle and Lucas and working with them absolutely influenced the style and influenced different things about it. But I think the conversation with my cinematographer, Tobias Dadam, started really early on, like probably, you know, a year before they got involved. I'm thinking like we were inspired by certain, I could say certain, let's see, more recent films. Like The Favorite gave me some encouragement. There was something in The Favorite that I was like, oh, there was something for me to chase. Definitely Phantom Thread was another big inspiration, just in terms of what Toby and I spoke about. But it had a lot to do with just kind of collecting influences from all over the place, and then also kind of reflecting my experiences, whether it was being in Paris or just what it feels like just working, you know, with these fabricated sets and just really creating a world the way that we imagined or wanted it to be. So giving the choices of no cell phones or no computers, it's really just like a wishful thinking.
Yes. Can Michelle and Lucas just tell me, I mean, obviously, it seems like you read the book and you participated in the script too, but can you tell, each of you, can you tell me what attracted you to the book, the script, and the role? Maybe you can start, we can start with Michelle.
Well, I mean, you know, Patrick's writing just transports you, and it's this combination of painting these wildly kind of eccentric, slightly larger than life characters, and yet rooted in this reality and bringing you inside to, you know, into these sort of insular worlds that you otherwise, you know, from the outside would never, you know, experience or even expect. And I think that was I found that with the character of Francis, because I didn't grow like Aza. I didn't grow up certainly in this world or even near this world. I grew up in California. I don't think I even knew this sort of world existed, which is interesting. Kind of, we all live in our own bubbles, right? Whatever bubble you happen to live in. But and I think and funny and witty and just really, really smart and sophisticated and unapologetic at the same time, incredibly moving. And it's a very you know, it's really particular to Patrick's writing. You can't even, it's not really comparable to anyone else. But I loved Francis, I loved Malcolm, I loved all of these people. I thought it was just one of the strangest, most lovely things I had ever read.
Did you read it before? Have you read the book before?
No, I read the script and then I immediately ordered the book. And it, you know, the adaptation is just so close, and it really stays true to the tone and the voice of the book, and the it's really, when you love a novel so much, you know, it's really hard to lose anything. But inevitably we'd hit spots in the script during filming and I'd be like, I don't understand this. Why is she saying this? Why is she doing this? What is happening? And we would, every like 2 days I'd come to Oz and I'd say, I don't understand this. And then I'd find it in the book, and inevitably it was there, like one small sentence, and it would explain something that I'd been perplexed by for months.
Thank you. And for you, Lucas?
Yeah, I think the moment, there's a moment, and because everyone watching this has seen the movie, I can say it. The moment I fell in love with the script was early on. It was the scene when Malcolm comes into the kitchen and his mom, Frances, is like sort of maniacally sharpening her knife. I assume this is still in the movie. I thought
that Lucas has not seen the film yet. He will be watching it on the drive-in for the first time.
What's in my version? There was a knife.
It is.
Okay, yeah. And there was something about it that was so, it was funny, but it was funny in a way that pointed out something about humans, which is that most of us are kind of insane, I think. And I think there's a motor and an engine running in us that we rarely give voice to, which is something that is kind of, especially when in tough situations, sort of just wants to like sharpen a knife in the dark, or and I found that Patrick's his writing voice continually surprised me throughout the whole book. It was like I don't even know what to compare it to, but there was something about Malcolm that I just didn't understand. He didn't make sense to me in a way that I was really drawn to. Like there was, and I'd played a bunch of characters before this who were very who were enduring situations that were very traumatic or troublesome, and Malcolm sort of, he has this really weird life in which there's a lot of dissonance, and yet he sort of handles there's something completely unique to the way that he chose to deal with his issues, and in a way that didn't make any sense to me. But the way that Patrick, the more I read of the book and the way that he outlined his behavior, and there's a flashback in the book that really helped me understand the character, and he's really one of my favorite writers, and I fell in love with the script.
It's definitely like neither of you have an easy part to play, because Frances is not very sympathetic. You know, I mean, you can see her as not a really nice person. She left her husband, died like dead in an hotel room. She abandoned her son when she's young. She doesn't really have friends. She's not really friendly or nice. So it's not something that people would embrace in playing, and yet you have to make her like look very sympathetic and that someone that we are attracted to. And it's very difficult to do this. It's challenging because she internalized all her pain and all the suffering and all the traumatic things that happen in her life. And you have to play it like this. And it's the same for Malcolm, because you have to play someone who's very distant to everything that happened to him. You're a follower most of the time. And then you have to express very subtly, both of you, the pain that you're going through like this. And that's why it really works as an audience. So was it challenging for you to play these roles? Maybe Michelle first?
It was challenging, and it was really interesting though, because when you're approaching any character, and especially if it's from a novel, or your job is to try to really flesh them out, and even if you're playing a quote unquote evil or unlikable character, you're always trying to find the humanity in it, because otherwise it's not terribly interesting and it's pretty predictable. But the thing that I found with Frances was, and it was actually kind of more in the editing process that it really rang true, is the more sympathetic I tried to make her, the less sympathetic she became. And I can't exactly explain that, but it's like the more sympathetic we tried to make her, the less tragic she became. And, she's damaged. And, there are some references in the book, and I think you understand in the book a little more clearly about what that damage is, and really get a real insight into what it's like as a child growing up into this bubble, and how it really can paralyze you as an adult in just being able to function in kind of the everyday world. And it's kind of tragic in nature that, you sort of don't have the same survival mechanisms that a lot of people or most people grow up with, just having to deal with, you know, facing adversity on a daily basis. And so you just don't develop those coping skills. And so, but, you know, it's a movie and you can't kind of bring all of that to the screen. And so, you know, hopefully what you come away with is just that some knowledge of, or some sense of that, of the tragic nature of her personality, and how I think by the end of the film, though, it feels hopeful in that there is a hope for Malcolm to not sort of follow in her footsteps. And so
yeah, I think for me, I think it's God, I think I spend a lot, it's hard not to today in this time period to not spend a lot of time wondering if you are a sympathetic person. I spend a lot of my time thinking if I'm a good or a bad person, and trying to sort of maneuver my life so that I can earn my position as like, oh, I'm a human, but I struggle for the right things. And it's pretty exhausting, actually, that struggle. And I think is one of the things I love about this character is he's not really preoccupied with it. And I think, I don't think we see enough stories about people like that. Because I think that it feels like a very 2020 intention to sort of just constantly trying to earn the love and admiration of the people around you. Almost like everyone is kind of a politician these days, I think, to some extent. I didn't mean to get political with this this comment, but I do feel that way, and I have great respect for artists and writers who tell stories about people who are unflinchingly human. And I think Malcolm is flawed and lazy and confused, and also just a human being who has a heart and loves deeply, and what a beautiful thing to get to portray that.
Yeah, I would just kind of just jump in too, that for me at least, and again, it begins with Patrick's wonderful writing, that I had fallen in love with people that I didn't understand what it was about them that I loved. Like, what was I connecting, especially since their issues, the problems seem so far away from almost everybody's, including mine. But it really was that asking, what is my connection, which is something that I really enjoy about films, where you have to find what it is about, even with people that you maybe not on the surface you can see what's heroic about them or what's good about them, but you feel a connection, and it forced me to dig deep into myself and keep asking these questions. And seeing Michelle and Lucas and really all of our actors bringing these characters to alive, I constantly was still just like loving them and not questioning what they were doing, but just pursuing where that love was coming from. What was it that I continued to admire and still do, you know?
Thank you. There's something I always liked in your films, Elsa. It's the pacing, and the pacing you put in the film, because even if you take a story that could be nearly conventional, it's filmed in a way, or maybe not in the shooting itself, but it always comes where the pacing is a little bit unexpected all the time. It's either like a little slower than you think it would be. It's a little destabilizing a little bit. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit how you achieve that balance, you know, that pacing, if it's like from the shooting or it's like more like later in the editing. I don't know if you still edit your films, but there's a lot of scenes like this where we're like, oh no, it doesn't happen like this. And it makes it very unique and very original.
It's good to hear. I would say it's definitely not anything that I impose or like I try to force onto the film. It's not something that I'm looking for. always trying to cut true to the material and to the rhythm of the material and to the performances. But it makes sense what you're saying. I think like I'm very much inspired by artists that are out of step, and I think that I make films about people and for an audience that feels out of step. So it makes sense that what you're saying happens. But again, it's really just trying to stay true to the material for me. I mean, sometimes I wonder, just like, I'm still quite dyslexic, so I wonder if just what feels normal to me in terms of pacing translates in this odd way, but it feels human to me. There's nothing that feels unnatural, though I can see from what you're saying. I think the bigger thing for me is how to continue to surprise in terms of directions that we're going. And I really, really love that about stories and films and really any art. If it can kind of feel like it's making all these random turns in all these different directions that you wouldn't expect, but then ultimately when you get to the end, you realize, okay, this whole path has been very thought out and controlled.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. You'd always lead. I mean, I think in all your work, like you lead the audience in an unexpected direction. So we're just like following a path. And I'm sure it's even more for people who haven't read the book, but even so, because it's not just the story, it's the way it's shot also. And then people are just like, oh, surprise. Well, and that really is the film.
I like the in-betweens. I like seeing, you know, when I'm looking at this performance, especially when I'm in the edit room, and the editor, Hilda Basua, is someone I worked very, very closely with, but had an incredible experience working with her on this. You know, I get to see these choices that these actors make frame by frame and beat by beat. And I really enjoy being in the air with them and breathing with them and allowing us to sit with them and feel what their lives are like, even in these moments of silences or in these moments in between as they get up and walk from one place to another. I feel like that's as much as a character development as anything that they could say or any big action.
So talking about, you know, it's a great ensemble cast because there's a lot of really great roles for everyone, and everybody has an interesting story. Even the smaller roles are very much alive, and you want to know more about them also. But I was wondering, when all the characters and the cast is so strong, is it more, does that create like level of challenges and difficulty for you, Michelle, or for you, Lucas? Do you feel like, do you need to fight more for your role and your character, or does you come across and just mingle and, you know, it's many people in there that are fighting for their scenes and their part, and the chemistry works really well.
Well, I found that it's not really people or actors fighting for their parts. It's fighting for the truth of their character and the behavior of their character and what. There was only one scene. It was that end scene, and it was just massive where I felt like I was a little bit sort of fighting for the truth of who my character was in that moment in the film. I mean, that is the beauty of this writing and the beauty of this casting. It's so beautifully cast. Each of these actors it's just really a tribute to each of these actors playing these roles, that they were able to bring that kind of dimension to them, because, you know, it's only on paper. And that was the other thing about the way Aza directed this film. And you speak about the tone and you speak about the pacing and the timing. I read this and I thought, this is such beautiful material that could so easily go off the rails, because the tone of this is so critical. And you know, Aza just hit it. He just really, from the get-go, and it's a hard thing to describe to an actor what that tone is. You know, I guess, you know, that I love working with an ensemble cast. I really, it's really some of the most enjoyable time I've ever spent on a movie set is working with a big group of people.
Yeah, and I think for me, I never felt like I was fighting for the spotlight in any way. I felt, and I attribute, I feel like Ozzy did such a great job of seeing. I felt so seen, and I feel like he made everybody feel that way. But I really felt like he was watching me in a way that was very. I felt like I was being intimately taken care of as an actor in a way that helped me. I imagine that sort of fight for the spotlight would only come from an insecure place of not really knowing what was going on, and I felt like whenever I lost sight of it, he came in and helped guide me back into it. So, and it was always about some kind of emotional truth or some ways in which, and the world was so much of why I loved doing this movie was the fact that I loved watching the movie unfold before my eyes. I loved that world. I couldn't wait to film those scenes at the end where we were all together because I wanted to have those experiences. I wanted to be in the apartment with all those people. I wanted to be at the party and to be drunk at 3 a.m., you know, like that was so much of why I wanted to do this project, was to have this experience. So if I was solely focused on myself, I would have missed out on why I wanted to be there.
Good to know about the drinking at 3 a.m. in the apartment.
We weren't drunk. We weren't drunk. Though.
It was water.
It was great.
To get you.
It was great.
But it definitely was in the room when we were all packed in there. You could feel the sense of what it reflected the story very much. You felt everybody in this room and all working together and really working in tandem. And it had so much to do with confidence from all of the actors. I don't think there was any fighting because people were always being who they were, no matter where in the frame they were. So there was never an issue for me where we could go someplace and somebody wasn't in the moment. It just allowed these to play it more as instruments where people were stepping forward and this note was coming from this person at this point and was building to here and then building over here and allowing this to kind of crescendo in the way that it hopefully does.
Were you watch movies to prepare or just in general?
Yeah, we watched, well, let's see, with Michelle, I gave you Trouble in Paradise, and I think maybe La Strada or La Dolce Vita, one of those that I found like, because I felt like there's a connection between that Fellini, at least the way that I understood the socialite world was really through Fellini films and just that circusy feel to it. I think with Lucas, on our very, very first meeting, which was just great, you know, we met for lunch, and then I was talking about inspiration, and I brought up Kaurismäki and that La Vie de Bohème, and then I was like, well, actually, it's playing tonight at the Metrograph, and Lucas was like, okay, well, I'll meet you there, but I didn't really expect him to be in the lobby when I went later on that night, but there he was, and we watched that, and that was really our first, and then we wound up, I think, from there to King of Comedy, maybe, and then
and Playtime.
Right.
Jacques Tati and Popeye, and I think there was another, but La Vie de Bohème was so helpful because there's a character who like sleeps in his suit, and it was like in that moment I think we were walking afterwards, and Ozzy was like, what do you see any of Malcolm in it? And he mentioned that he felt like that could be in the world of Malcolm, and it totally rung true for me, and that was part of what inspired Malcolm's costume and just his sort of complete comfort in just one thing. It felt really right, and there was a through line between this one character. I mean, a bunch of the characters in it, but I forget the guy's name. But one character in La Vie de Bohème.
Yeah.
You're getting a little bit of the Jean-Pierre Léaud haircut too, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly, totally. You're so right. Yeah, I did see that movie and think I want to have his hair. So that's funny.
Yeah, we saw that, and then I'm trying to think. We saw, and then like I think with every film for mine, I wind up going back to Hal Ashby pretty much all of the time. So I think Being There was another one that we watched, and that I think a lot about it, and gives me some kind of road map in of possibilities at least.
Totally.
It seems fun to be working with you.
It is.
At least watching movies with you. I don't know about the acting part, but the watching movies seems kind of fun.
The movie part's fun. The acting part.
The making of the movie wasn't fun, but watching
the movie. Great projector.
I think we're gonna have to end pretty soon. I did have a final question about the if you want to discuss the ambiguity of the final scene of the movie, which is, you can see, I mean, I don't know if it's that ambiguous. I don't know. I think it also depends if you read the book or haven't read the book, and in what mood you are when you watch the film.
I think you just answered it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it is. I think what you said is right. It's what mood you're in and what you decide to see. And so maybe that is a definition of ambiguous, but I also think there's a bunch of changes from book to script and script to movie that were made that usually were looking for something just as honest but more cinematic. And I think that's at least what dictated those choices for me. And still be as honest as what the writing originally was. And so that was always something that, and that Patrick luckily was also very embracing of, which I know is sometimes very hard for writers, but just to kind of see how this translation can work and how it expands and how it needs to shift because of just the actuality of now making it rather than it just being in our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. It's completely different on a page than on a screen, where you don't have the luxury of hiding behind anything else. Like, you see what you see. So it kind of, the choices you make, I think, make sense.
I hope so. And I think that it comes down to the love that we were all, the inspiration that we found in that book for all three of us. If that is still carried on into the movie, for me, that feels like it's success. If that carries on, just that thing, that it stays true to that sense, whether it still winds up being something very different.
Great. Well, that was great. I'm really happy we were able to talk about the film and that everybody had a lot to say. I hope we get to meet in person whenever the world becomes back to normal eventually. I think the movie's scheduled. Well, the movie's gonna be released next year, I think. So I'm always thinking, well, but by next year, I'll be able to travel.
No, it's been a wonderful thing to have this film to focus on, and it's really been exciting to have this festival as a place to aim it towards. And so I really appreciate all of this.
Thank you. We all loved the film, so it was really great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess we'll see you at the next press conference, Zoom, or something.
See you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.